Hello, this is Magenta Pixie and I'm here today with my lovely friend Jessica Woods. We're getting to know each other. We've only known each other for a few weeks, about a month actually, isn't it, since we met? And we thought you might like to listen in on some of our conversations. I think it's interesting for people to sort of see what we went through as children, because I think it's very much something many people will resonate with, because these things have been there since we were very little.
Absolutely.
So what's the first thing you remember that links you into anything that could be part of this movement now?
What I've noticed recently, before I tell my story, because it's the story behind the story, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
But is that people, regardless of whether or not they've always had it, because a lot of people say, I never had it like you, because as I say, I'll tell you how it was for me, but they're sort of like, but I'm just coming awake now. And there is no wrong timing.
No.
Everything is perfect. Everybody's got it all. We're just remembering anyway. That's all it is, as we were saying earlier. So it doesn't matter when people's lights are coming on or when they're connecting. So that's really important to know.
Absolutely,
I feel.
absolutely. It's like a web, and you can take your place in that web at the age of 5, and you're a shining light, and you're in that web. You can wake up at 50. You take your place. Nobody's above anyone else. No one's in front of anyone else. Everything is a circle. Everything is one, and there's no winner. There's no loser. It's not linear. So it doesn't matter when you wake up. That's really important.
Absolutely, and also people, some say, well, I haven't got it. Everybody's got it. It's just what we focus on and where our intentions are. Yeah. So my focus, obviously, when I came into this lifetime, was to feel a little bit different from everybody else, which I know a lot of people can resonate with this. There's a lot of people I've spoken to who said, I never seem to fit in the family.
Absolutely.
And all different. My family, 2 brothers, mum and dad, not religious in any way, shape or form, but they didn't believe in what I knew, that there was more. It's like, didn't believe in ghosts, and when you're dead, you're dead. I heard all that, so it's quite interesting. So when I had a lot of experiences when I was young, a lot of different experiences. I used to love astral planing. I could be in all dimensions in different places. And I used to go to a particular place where I'd go down a tunnel and all sorts, and remember that. And I used to get chased out of places as well, because I probably shouldn't have been there.
Wow, this happened to you as a child.
All these things used to happen, and I used to be consciously aware of it, as well. So it wasn't just waking up. The only time that I got really scared was when I astral planed and actually saw myself leaving. And I can't remember how old I was. I wasn't particularly old, but I'd probably say 9-ish seems to ring a bell. Wow. And I remember looking down, and I was told that if you saw your body outside of your body, you were dead. That was it. So I had such a jolt, and I woke up in bed, and I was like, oh, I'm still alive. Because I didn't really, obviously my brain didn't make common sense of what was happening, and I was in that place. But so I never really did it after that. I was aware of the sensation, but I think I'd kind of blocked my mind to the fact that if I don't see myself, then it's okay, I'm not going to die. Not that I was scared of dying, I might say, but it was just that's what I was told as a child, these things that we,
absolutely.
And then I used to get woken up by spirits in the night, and in the end I used to just get really annoyed with them. Will you leave me alone? And things like that. So, and I'd go to different houses, and the minute I'd walk in, I think, poor, I don't like it in here. There'd be obviously what I now know is, entities or spirits that are stuck in this plane, and they're really unhappy, and so there was a lot of that I used to see. And there was my bestest friend used to live in a house in the middle of nowhere, which probably didn't, amplified the fact that there was nowhere to run other than fields for miles. And just before I'd arrived, there was bang, 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 bang on the door, and then all sorts of amazing experiences. Like we sat there, and the bottle of wine, the cork just flew out, and it was well tight, and it wasn't one of those fizzy ones either. And there was all sorts of wonderful things like that happened. And I had my first channeling experience when I was no older than 10 or 11. I can't remember date-wise, but I freaked out a lot of my schoolmates because one minute we were just talking about, you know, were we going to go to the park, or should we go over to, you know, somewhere else, and the next minute apparently I just went off in one. My eyes started rolling and was talking in a very strange voice. And so when I came, all I have recollections coming out of it and looking at people and them saying, what did you just do? And I'm like, did I do something?
Wow.
But feeling very odd, just feeling very, very odd. So I had, and you know, I've had some of the most amazing meditations, astral experiences, or whatever you want to call it. So I find myself extremely fortunate that I have those conscious memories of things like that. I wasn't particularly aware that I was clairvoyant or psychic or anything else as a child. I just assumed that everybody did.
Yeah.
But I spent my whole entire childhood gazing at the sky and the stars. So if it was night, I used to sit, even when it was freezing cold and I used to have ice on the inside of the window, I used to scrape it off and I'd look up at the stars and for hours just talking to them. So yeah, that was kind of my childhood. And then, as I said, when I got into I was my early 20s, I was described as an oven that was about to explode if I didn't channel or work with some of the psychic stuff. And I met a lady, a German lady, lovely lady, brilliant teacher. Didn't see a lot of her, I might say, because she was always travelling all around the world, but she was the one who said to me, you've got to work with this stuff. And I said, well, what do I do? I had no idea, really. So she kind of said to me, well, you need to just say what's going on, whatever you get. So that was it. I did. So over the years, as I said, I did a really good job of avoiding working, or even telling people I'd know things about them, and I just obviously wouldn't say anything. It's like, not for me to say, it's nothing to do with me. So it kind of evolved from there, that I decided that actually it was about me. And I think that's it. I think this consciousness, this energy we're talking about, the new age, about whether we've got it consciously or we haven't, we've all got it. And that's what I say to everyone. I mean, I've recently just decided to start a development group, and I said to them, has anyone ever done tarot cards? There was one person who had. I've never been taught, I don't know what the cards mean, but you know, in the same way that you can read anything, I say to them, you can read, you know, okay, and just gave them the card, and the next minute they're reading off all this stuff, and they couldn't believe that they could do it. Yeah. And all it is just being focused enough. That's all, to me, that's it. If your intention is so important. You cannot live your life without intention. So for example, intention, once we finish this session, would be, you know, whatever I'm going to go and do, it's going to be good, it's going to be fun, it's going to be whatever. So I always do that. So the intention for teaching someone from a self-development point of view or a self-awareness point of view is to say, what's the intention? What do you want? You want to read that card? Then you can. Yeah. So anything is possible, and that's what I've come to realise about not only myself but about others. Anything is possible. Never limit yourself, and you know, always, you know, trust that. And it doesn't matter what your background or whether you think you've got it or you haven't. If it feels right, then you most definitely do it. So that's me. I've talked a lot about my background. Yeah. So what about you?
I think it's really interesting that you had such astral experiences as a child. I didn't start astral projecting until, well, not that I'm consciously aware of, until my late teens, early 20s. As a child, again, I knew, same as you, that I was different. I felt like I didn't fit in. But as I said, I had a father that was a hypnotherapist, so even from a very young age, I'm talking about baby, I knew that my daddy was like me, but everyone else was different, and I knew that there was something about my dad that was in fact, I kind of picked up his energy very, very young, sort of 18 months, 2 years old. Every time he would walk in the room, I would know that he was different. And I think I was about 4 or 5 when he told me that he did hypnosis, and I said, I knew there was something different about you, you know. So it was, that was my sort of psychic awareness back then. Obviously I had no idea what that was. There was a religious sort of feeling in the family. The family were Catholic, and I remember loving being at church. I could sense the energies of the church. I felt very at home there. I now know that obviously I've had past life connections with churches, and that there's great energy in churches. I love the church. But my first memory of knowing that there's more than what we see here, I was 7, and I just remember sitting down looking at a cup, and then I decided that I wanted to move the cup with my mind without touching it. So I'd be like, like this, you know, like in that Superman film, you know, there's that, I don't know if you've seen the original Superman, where the 3 of them come down to Earth, and we have powers, and then there's one that's going, and that's what I was trying to do. And I'm getting so frustrated and thinking, why can't I move it? Because I know I used to be able to do that. Somewhere, before I was me, I used to be able to move things with my mind, and I didn't need to have to use my hands. And I actually felt using my hands to move things was really old-fashioned and sort of not the way it should be. It should be moved with your mind. I remember mentioning it to my mother at 7, and she said, "Oh, you're talking about telekinesis. There's no such thing." And I remember going away, and so that was my first memory of something else, and it was a real kind of zoning into that space at that time. My childhood was spent in the world of the imagination repeatedly. I don't think I really ever came down to earth as a child until I guess I hit puberty. So when I was young, I was either reading stories, I read very young, reading stories, grew up on Enid Blyton, all the fairies and the wizards and the magic, and I just couldn't get enough. I mean, I was reading every day, under the covers with a torch, you know, trying to stay awake at school and keep my attention in the boring classes, because I wanted to get home and see what had happened to Mr. Pinkwhistle or what happened up the faraway tree or whatever. And then when I couldn't get a book, I was so craving that imagination and that magic that if I had no book to read, I would create a story. So I used to sit with a tennis ball and beat it up against the wall and tell myself a story. And that started around about the age of 7 as well. So I'd be like, you know, there was a girl called Susie. She went to the park and she saw this, you know, dragon, and you know, and I just sat there for hours. And my mum would come in, "What are you doing?" And as I got older, and I could go outside. We were in a detached house. I would walk round and round the house for hours and hours, just bouncing my tennis ball. And I'd go out there straight after school, and I'd be there till it got dark. And my mum would be like, "Petra, you know, will you come in?" So at one point I think she was going to call a psychiatrist, because she was really, really concerned that all I ever did was bounce a tennis ball and tell myself stories. So she thought there was something wrong, and it was my father who said, "She's just in her imagination, you know, let her do it." I now know that I was remembering where I came from, and I knew that I was keeping that aware. And I think that many parents will shut down unintentionally that awareness in their child by stop daydreaming, you know, get yourself sorted in the real world. There's no such thing as fairies, there's no such thing as whatever. And I was told all that as well, because my mum and dad weren't together by this time, so I didn't see my dad that often to keep me aware. I was with my mum, who, you know, no offence, she's lovely, but she did sort of not really want me to go into that world of imagination. She tried to get me grounded.
Don't understand it.
She wanted me to have some common sense and think about getting some schoolwork done, getting a job and earning money, because that's the way you go forward. And I always felt, no, that's not the path for me. And the other thing, I had experiences, not necessarily with spirits, but I don't really know what to call them. I would lie in bed, and as I was falling asleep, the bed would, I presume, maybe I was in the astral world at that point, the bed would change, the covers would go into like a sort of flat landscape, and there'd be little people this big, and they'd all run across my covers, and I'd be half scared and half very much at home and know that they were meant to be there in my family, but half scared. And there were little people run up and they'd talk to me, and I remember seeing them running across the bed, and I could feel them, and I guess I was being spoken to and trained. And so I didn't have experiences where I was flying, or I don't remember going on ships. I know a lot of people have had UFO, ET experiences going on ships as a child. With me, it was these little people coming onto my bed, and that happened a lot, an awful lot. How the sort of the first time I had a channeling experience, I was 11, and it was under a controlled situation. My father, as a hypnotherapist, decided to teach me self-hypnosis, but before he wanted to teach me self-hypnosis, he would take me into hypnosis. I was having a problem at school learning to swim. I was 11 and I still had armbands on. and all the other, which is water wings, I think some people call them. So I'm still sort of in the sort of low bottom group for swimming with my armbands on, and all my friends are swimming along, and I just had a fear of water. And my father took me into hypnosis to help me with that. And obviously while we're in hypnosis, something happened. I was aware that we had a conscious mind and a subconscious mind because my father had taught me this. I was aware that when we were in a dream state, it was the subconscious mind. When we were awake, it was the conscious. And what would happen is when he took me into hypnosis, I would feel a split, and I would feel myself falling away, and that the conscious mind was falling to one side and the subconscious mind was then stepping forward, even though I was aware of the two. So I had this duality thing going on, and I was 11. And then I would then speak, but it wasn't me. I was over here, and it was this part of me that was speaking, which wasn't really me. And because it was the subconscious mind, I used to call him, I saw him as a male, I used to call him Subby, short for subconscious, and he would talk to my father, and he would explain to my father why I couldn't swim, what the problem was with the armbands, and other things I was going through at school, and you know, this subconscious aspect of me would talk to my father in hypnosis. And I think once that happened, it must have triggered something, because I was getting more experiences that were going a bit too fast, and I remember shutting down a little bit and pushing it away a little bit after that. When I hit puberty and I started noticing boys and wanting to wear makeup and all the things you do, I kind of pushed it all away. I didn't want to be different. I wanted to be the same. I stopped telling myself stories, and I wanted to be accepted by all the girls, so I'd be accepted by the boys, and I could be one of the... But it never really worked. I was still too different, and I found my connection in drama and in the theatre, and that's the nearest I found to people that were like me, because they were deeply creative, and I was good at acting, so I could connect with the others that were good at acting, and that's where I found my world. I didn't come back really to the spiritual in any strong sense until I was in my late teens, when astral projection occurred again, and then in my early 20s I became interested again in these things, started reading a few books on lucid dreaming because I'd had this astral projection.
Well, you triggered loads of similarities when you were talking. You know, I was right back in that place when I was young. You were saying about bouncing balls and all of that, and it was like, that's exactly what I used to do as well. So it's almost like we were walking the same path, but in completely different ways. But you know,
and I found that with some of my clients. They'll tell me their story, and I'll think, I could be you in another body, living this life. Well, I know. But it really hits you sometimes when you do hear someone speak. You think, I am you in another life, and it's so similar to the one I've lived, right down to the challenges, the upsets, the hard times, the good times, the awakening. It can be so similar. You know, we really are mirrors for one another, every single one of us, and sometimes we can really, really see that in others.
And that's what's becoming more and more apparent and obvious. That's the oneness. That's the dissolving of the separation, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And we're individuals choosing to consciously create, but being more aware of that, as I call it, the divine self. You know. And being consciously aware of those different lives and those connections. And again, more for another time.
More for another time. Okay.
Wow. It's lovely to hear all about you and get to know you.
And well, thanks, Jess, for talking to me today. And see you another time.